kua tipu, nā raka, kua puawai, nā hua, kua waiata, nā manu, kua tau te wau, kua tau, kua tau, kua tau e, haere mai te ai I o tanga, haumie, huie, taikie. I'll read it in English as well. The trees have grown, the flowers have bloomed, the birds have sung, the forest is settled. It is settled, it is settled, it is settled. Let peace be among us. Let us all be as one. Welcome everyone to our Ask Your Rainbow MPs Anything event, where you can ask your Rainbow MPs anything. I'm Rosemary, my pronouns are they, them. I will be hosting tonight and yeah, just providing a platform for you to hear from our wonderful Rainbow Green MPs. I'll just do some housekeeping first before we hear our introductions from our wonderful MPs. First, to let you know, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it afterwards on Facebook and on YouTube, which is really awesome. For the event, what's going to happen is that we'll have a quick intro from each MP, and then we're going to get straight into the questions. That's pretty much it. It's a Q&A. We're going to A the Qs. And to do that, there's a Q&A button just at the bottom of the screen. Hopefully you can see it. Actually, we already have some questions in there, so you're onto it. So you just click that Q&A button and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible. And also for tonight, we have an option to put on closed captions, to put on subtitles, and you'll find that just at the bottom of the screen on Zoom. That's optional, and you can put it on for yourself. You can take it off if you don't like it. I personally have it on because I love subtitles. Great, let's hear from our MPs. If I'll pass to one of you and then you can pass on to each other. Let's go to Jan first.
Kia ora koutou, ko Jan Logie aho. I'm one of the Green Party MPs. I'm originally from Invercargill in the deep south, but now live in the rohi of Ngāti Toa Rangatira in the beautiful Cannons Creek. And super stoked to be part of this conversation, and I will hand to Elizabeth.
Kia ora koutou. On my father's side, whakapapa to the tribes here of Gisborne, where I live, whānau ākai, Ngāti Oneone, te aitanga maha ki rongo whakaata me ngai tāmanuhiri, and on my mother's side to County Clare and County Tipperary in Ireland. I just want to do a shout out to my hot wife, Alofa, who is watching tonight. Today, we celebrate our 30th anniversary. So yeah, pretty cool to be spending it all with you while she is in Auckland working. So I'll pass to Chlöe.
Kia ora tātou e te whānau. My name is Chlöe Swarbrick. I am your Green MP for Auckland Central, and yeah, just utterly stoked to be amongst our Rainbow MPs. We make up 40% of our Green caucus, so we are therefore the proudest party in Parliament, which is of course reflected in our petition as led by Dr. Elizabeth Kerekere for us to end conversion therapy, which of course we finally managed to do, passing the third reading in the last few weeks. So yeah, just incredibly stoked with our party and all that we do. Green is of course one colour of the rainbow. And I will pass across to Ricardo.
Kia ora everybody, Ricardo here, originally from Tijuana, Mexico. I'm currently based in Tamaki Makaurau. I'm also very proud to be one of your Green MPs. Such a nice reprieve from everything else that is going on in this world. So really, I'm finding this space one of comfort. So yeah, looking forward to the conversations.
Amazing. So excited to have you all here, and happy 30th anniversary to you and your wife, Elizabeth. That's so wonderful. Awesome. We're so honored to have you with us here tonight. We've already got some audience Q&As in here, which is really lovely. Thank you so much. I've picked out one that I think would be really lovely to start with and fits in with that like warm, wholesome vibe. And it's from Brinley, and he said, what is your best fuzzy feelings memory from Pride Month / Big Gay Out? What a good question. I can pass to one of you, or does somebody have an idea right away?
Jan, don't you have photos?
Jan has a photo. For show and tell. You're on mute, Jan.
Man!
Take it away.
Okay, so this is actually from my very first Pride Parade, and I'm going to block out my friends. But if you can see that, that was my very first Pride Parade in the early 90s. It was the first devotion parade in Wellington. And my friends and I dressed up as Black fairies. And I think we handed out pink dollars as a critique of the whole attempt to businesses to sell shit to us to affirm our sexuality, which is still oddly a relevant concept. And it was just like fun. And it was a sense of just kind of taking over the street. There wasn't a huge number of us at that time, but it was just kind of a sense of just being, fuck you a little. Look at us, we're gorgeous.
I love that. While we're doing nostalgia, then yes, because long before Pride, there were individual types of marches, and I actually was on the board of Devotion for a couple of years and did a couple of the events, you know, of course. But this photo here, I'm just going to see if you can see it. This is Alofa and I in 1992 at the Coming Out March, which used to go down Ponsonby in Auckland. Alofa's t-shirt is the two women kissing, and it says "Read My Lips," and my one says "Absolutely Positively Queer." So it's and been going to what was originally started as the Lesbian and Gay Fair in Wellington, which has been going for forever. So I think I started going there when I was in the late 80s, yeah, 90s. So.
I was just going to add, unfortunately, nothing anywhere near as cool, given that I was born 2 years after that photo that Elizabeth just showed all of you. But harking back to the point that Jan was making before about how we're still having these debates around the corporatization and the ability to monetize our community, perhaps one of the coolest moments of the past few years when actually it was, I think we were the only party at the first kind of Pride March that led over the past few years from Albert Park down the hill towards the Sky Tower and then across the Aotearoa Square, and the amount of effort that's gone into claiming that space in Auckland Pride. Just huge shout out to Max Tweedy and the organising team who've done a phenomenal job of reshaping what Pride looks like in Tāmaki, and actually also you know, better reflecting the diversity of our communities too.
Yeah, I think for me that year where we were having that debate about police in uniform participating in Pride was my favorite, because I think to me it was like a really difficult one, but we came through it. And I actually want to give a shout out to lesbian icon Sissy Rock, because she was sort of like not only leading those conversations, but like receiving a lot of the awful sort of hate, and she was really like steadfast in her sort of determination to create a space where yeah, people's concerns around the concerns about the institutions that have a history of oppressing us were heard. And so yeah, and that was the first Pride March where I was kind of like, damn, this, to me at least, that was the first one where I was like, oh, this feels like a community event, because my previous experiences I felt a bit like, you know, lots of business floats. So and I wish I had been out when the Hero Parade was still a thing, so because that I understand was a little bit less corporatized back then. Yeah,
it was unapologetically sexy, actually.
We like that.
It was hot, right?
Yeah, I love that. And that's one of the things that I love about Pride as well, is a time when I can dress however I want. If that's a time when I want to wear like just a little bit of clothing to be gay out, and I know that people aren't going to like sexualize me or do anything uncomfortable, people are just going to see me exactly how I want to be seen. And that's really special, eh? Jan, you talking about your friends dressing up as Black fairies reminds me of how we're all kind of like dressed in a little bit of we were talking earlier, like a little goth queer uniform. And Elizabeth, oh my gosh, I want those shirts, like both the shirt you were talking about and Alofa has.
We still have them in my collection of lesbian gone queer t-shirts.
Oh my gosh, you know how Chloe last election got those green sweatshirts up and running, I'm like, maybe next election we do a pride
Reissue the
collection.
queer historical agenda.
Yes, I would love that. I mean, also speaking of that, I want to shout out to Sarah Moana, who made the shirt that I'm wearing for the 50th anniversary of Pride in Aotearoa, which is this year. So I was really honored to be able to get a piece of merch from an awesome local artist to commemorate the occasion. Thank you so much for sharing. We've got more questions from the audience. This is a really great one about the Ministry for Rainbow Communities that we're trying to create. It's from Sydney. Kia ora whānau, please tell us more about the Ministry for Rainbow People, Rainbow Communities, and what it may look like. I'd also like to combine this question with one that I thought of a little earlier, which was that if you all maybe want to share a way that having a rainbow ministry would have helped your mahi in the past or would help your mahi in the future, like what will it look like in action? How will it impact how Parliament works? I'll pass to Elizabeth first for this, no, great.
So a little bit of an outline. So firstly, I want to acknowledge the legendary Jan Logie, who tries not to roll her eyes when I say this, but this was her idea. And so we campaigned on this, and we wanted to kind of get past BDMRR and conversion practices to then say, right, this is our next big thing. We want a point of contact for our communities and a mechanism for accountability and organisation across the whole of government. For those who remember back in, was it the 90s, when we had the Rainbow Desk, 2 people, and they did a maximum of 3 based at MSD, and just that resource was incredible, what we were able to do, and how you can streamline, how we can create change. We rely very heavily on having queer people inside organisations and saying, can you tell us what's the best way to do this? But it's a lot of trial and error, and things change so much inside government, and they restructure, and you have to start all over again. Like, for example, with the complete restructure of the health system, many trans, intersex, non-binary communities had done a heap of work with their DHB and had starting to create pathways and having ways to operate, and all this gets thrown back up in the air and you don't know where it's going to land. So we just thought this is a way of just a very clear mechanism that sends a message to all our communities in the ways that the laws put a little stake in the ground. It says, right, okay, we're going to make it easier for trans, intersex, non-binary to identify their gender on their birth certificate. We're going to ban conversion therapies. We're not going to really penalise the people who do it, but we're going to hope they stop, because I guess public pressure, but we are going to resource the Human Rights Commission to look at some sort of civil redress, but we're not going to make ACC consider claims on this. So there's so many things where things are interconnected, and it's really hard sometimes to pick that apart. So we want this to fulfill many, many roles. In particular, we want to make sure it's led by someone who's part of rainbow communities. We want to make sure we honour the expertise of our leadership across all of our activists, advocates, and just people trying to get on with their lives, but also grow our capacity and our workforce. Let's bring our best people into this place and let's make some stuff happen. I think we can't even envisage what it could be like if we could be coordinated against all our government, and even things like Te Ao Rere Kura, the report that our leader, who I see is on this call, the Honourable Marama Davidson, when she released that, had a strong involvement of rainbow people into that writing, but how does it roll out? Where is the expertise that makes sure it's rolled out properly? We want this to do that. Yes, so, and even though people should technically, as members of this population, we should be included and counted in every other thing, we all know if there's not a strategy that says, has our name on it and says what's going to happen, if there's not designated task force to do certain things, it does not happen. And that's what we want this to do. Was there another part to your question? Just checking.
Oh, just sharing about the Rainbow Ministry and a time that it might have made your mahi easier in Parliament.
I think it's the pathways. It's understanding. So, for example, how do we set up a ministry? What actually needs to happen to do these things, and what are the pressure points? So sometimes we can do a whole lot of advocacy in a particular way, and it doesn't help. It doesn't actually significantly change things. So one example then I would use is the UPR reports, the civil society reports that go to the United Nations when our country is answering questions on a particular mechanism that we have signed up to. So for example, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, or different ones. So I've been part of crews at writing submissions to them. So that's one good mechanism, but actually it'd be more powerful if we could actually say that change we need to see, how does it happen? Who are the decision makers in which departments? What are the dates when decisions are made? You know, if we want to get in the budget in May, we have to have already put in submissions September the year before. So any advocacy done at the beginning of before May has zero impact. Zero impact. The key decisions have already been made. So, you know, I could go about this for a while, so I'll hand it over to perhaps Ricardo.
I think from my perspective, I think one of the things that it would make a really big difference is providing that sort of cross analysis around things that sometimes we think are not necessarily directly queer issues, but actually impact queer communities, right? So I mean, I think of like, and I notice Gabriel made a comment on this policy, and I'll write you an update, Gabriel, after the meeting, around the acceptable standards of health, right? And like in immigration, which actually the Rainbow community is deeply impacted by this policy. And sometimes not having officials that can provide that specialized advice with input from the community can sometimes miss out the impact of how some policies we don't often think of as being queerphobic are actually deeply queerphobic. And so, yeah, I think to me that would really enhance the mahi that we're doing in that space.
I can
add romantic message to somebody, sorry, after Chlöe.
I can add something just from the perspective of, and I know it crosses over with Ricardo's immigration portfolio as well, but it pertains to kind of sexual health and also tertiary education. And it's something which a constituent, migrant student, brought to me about how the way that you kind of go through the pathway of becoming an international student requires that, because of the really cooked way that we think that international students are going to become strains on our health system, we require them to get private insurance, and that private insurance, because they're a captured audience, will not enable them to also cover their sexual health. For those who are in the queer community, that means for those who may need, for example, PrEP, they're not able to get that funded, which then means that it's hundreds of dollars every few months for them to be able to access that to prevent them from getting HIV/AIDS for participating in the queer community in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So it again is things like that that are totally missed in producing this policy. I'd also add just a fascinating intersection with even the drug law reform portfolio, where last term I was in a really peculiar situation where I was in front of the Minister of Health at that point in time, Dr. David Clark, trying to explain to him what poppers were. And that was when, we were seeing the reclassification of that substance, and just a complete lack of understanding from his officials about how this was utilized. And that's the disconnect between our communities and the lived experience and the stuff which end up on the desk of ministers. So that's the kind of stuff that I'd love to see, particularly in the drug law reform space, because, even talking about the kind of context they're in right now with the pandemic, like this is not the first pandemic that's faced our community in the last few decades. The HIV/AIDS pandemic and the intersection there with regard to health policy, there's just so many layers. There's so many layers.
I'd just add in terms of and noting Marama's comment in her work around homelessness and the absolute importance of having a lens across that in terms of the number of particularly queer young people who are kicked out of home homeless and struggle to get housing. And so for me, the ministry, like there's, and noticing also the amazing work that Marama led around and is leading around Te Aore Rikura, the ending family and sexual violence, and that actually, we started last term where the communities, organisations were coming together, recognising that these issues are real in our communities, but this has been framed as a heterosexual issue, right? A cis heterosexual issue, and the times that, like, I completely acknowledge in my own history of in community trying to deal with dynamics of violence and the community blowing apart, and we have history of that it makes intervention people less likely to want to intervene, but and unless we have people that understand the dynamics as well as the risks for people of acting, as well as, you know, the reality of it, we just miss it. And so the community was starting to come together across agencies, doing some really cool work, but there wasn't a connection between them and government. And, you know, we had to work really hard to try and make that connection. And a ministry provides that centre and natural meeting point, because, you know, you don't have to explain, you don't have to start from scratch and explain your very existence. It's a natural point to be able to organise and for information from government to be able to feed out to community to help kind of get us all on the same page. And for me, there's also like a really symbolic importance of, we have ministry for youth, for seniors, for women, for Pacific peoples, for Te Puni Kōkiri, that's a te tiriti, but actually that's around Māori development in itself at heart, and ethnic communities, and there's about to be one for disabled people. And like that's really important, and it plays a role in terms of informing government, but linking to community. And we've saw what the danger of under-resourcing ethnic communities meant in terms of Christchurch, right? Is actually we need to have a ministry and we need to properly resource it to have those links to community, to inform decision-making and to help connect our communities. And it's a sign of discrimination and stigmatization that there isn't one already. There's no other reason for it.
Absolutely, so well put, Jan. Thank you. And what a strong line to end on as well. We have another question pertaining to the Rainbow Ministry that I'm just going to tack on. Do you see the Rainbow Ministry having a role in assisting with complaints, particularly for trans people being denied affirmative care? I wanted to say that I feel like this is one of the reasons why we need it. Like I know from like personal, not individual, but personal, like my whānau experience, that getting trans healthcare is ridiculously difficult, and the kind of the hoops that you have to jump through as a trans person, particularly as a non-binary trans person, really incredibly difficult. And it would mean a lot to have a Rainbow Ministry for that purpose of having the nothing about us without us, right? Like all of you were saying, people who know what paupers are, but people who also understand the difficulties that trans people, that queer people, rainbow people, that intersex people have in this world, in our country, unfortunately. If y'all would like to add on to that, I'm totally open. But yeah, that's how I wanted to answer. Okay, great, thank you. Awesome. We have, wow, so many questions. I just wanted to say that for questions, if you could please put them in the Q&A function and not in the chat, that would be awesome. If you put them in the chat, we might not see them. So if you would like us to see your question and hopefully get to be able to answer it, please put it in the Q&A. And I would also like to say on the note of the captions that they are auto-generated. So some of them might be not exactly the right words. And yeah, please just note that. And I do apologize that we can't have completely accurate captioning. And I'm gonna do a little show and tell question. I know that Jan's ready for it. Not to shout you out already, but how about we do favorite item of clothing? All about expressing yourself, you know? I'll pass to Jan first to give anybody else time.
Well, thanks. This is the good thing of Zoom. I'm at home. I'm like,
yes.
my homework, but show and tell. So today, and I've got to admit, my favorite item of clothing changes on a weekly, if not daily basis, because I'm just that. But this is an enduring favorite, and I got it in Japan. I lived in Japan for quite a few years, and it's a recycled kimono. So that's been made into a jacket with a Rolling Stones t-shirt tacked onto the back. And it just kind of feels just a little rock and roll. And I'm, you know, who doesn't want a bit of that in their life, right? Yeah.
I just noticed that I was off mute, but you'll hear what I do every time I'm muted, which is, oh, wow, true. So sorry about that if it happens again. Chloe, I'm going to pass to you. Do you have one to share?
Not so much an item of clothing. I was actually puzzling over this. So yeah, a lot of band t-shirts. I've just got a lot of mates who I do music, so I collect a lot of band t-shirts, but it's probably actually these rings. So yeah, my good mate Tudumiki Harrington, or Tui, she makes everything. She makes shoes, she makes art and installations, and she makes jewelry. And yeah, this is the first ring that she ever made me. Which is just a very simple ring, but it goes on my pinky, and I feel like I'm a gangster when I'm wearing it because it's just like a pretty bigger one. But she also made these little trout rings when we were in Taupō for 15 of us who went for my partner Nadine's 30th birthday, all travelled there. So they've all got NW30 in there in 2020. So yeah, these are pretty special, and there's only 15 of them in the world. So I don't know, there's not clothing, but yeah, sentimental.
I think that counts as clothing. Very clever as well. I wouldn't have thought of that. Ricardo, do you have one to share?
I think normally I would go with plaid shirts, which I think that's like, like it's my go-to shirt even in Parliament, but I think it's pretty queer. I did have, sorry, I'm just grabbing a jacket.
Pretty lesbian, actually.
Gave me, and this is just like, I don't know. I really like it. I sometimes use it for work. You can barely see it because it's blurred in the background. But it's really big, oversized, and comfy. So for those days where I want to be comfortable but also colorful, that's that. But genuinely, I do embody the plaid aesthetic.
Yes, my favorite is a full-length black velvet coat that I've had. It's full Hogwarts coat, so with drapey sleeves and a hood. And one of the first things I did after I got elected into Parliament was get filmed from behind walking down the corridors with my flowing, it's like a cape cloak thing. And if you go onto my Instagram, there's not many things on there, but you will see a little video of us doing that. So, and I've had it, yeah, for over 30 years. It's my super favorite.
Oh, amazing. I do love to hear about people's favorite items of clothing. And Ricardo, yeah, that was that colorful clothing was very lesbian vibes. I don't know if Jan, you were referring to the plaid or to the colors of Ricardo's outfit, but both of them beautiful together. Solidarity. I'm gonna do another question, multitasking all at once. We have one from Zoe. How does your rainbow identity as an LGBTQI+ person shape your approach to politics? So could be interpreted in a few different ways, which I think is part of the beauty of the question. We can go to Chloe first. Haven't had you first, sorry to pull you out.
As much as I can, I'm going to link this actually into the other question about kind of sense or a starting point of kind of abolition of binaries in general. So for me, I think in grappling with kind of queer or rainbow identity, it is about recognition of fact, and much like I think many spaces with kind of neurodivergence as well, and as we grapple with kind of coming to understand far greater kind of the social implications and construct of disability and otherwise, that all of these things that have always been othered effectively just othered by virtue of how we've designed mainstream society, in that we intentionally ostracize people through that kind of process of system design and creation. So I think inherently existing as somebody who is queer and inherently engaging in processes like Pride and claiming that space is trying to break down those walls and those barriers and build those kinds of bridges. So yeah, I think for me it's about understanding and recognizing that your difference is something which isn't, you know, a binary kind of good or bad. It offers a different perspective, and it's therefore kind of as valuable as the other difference that you might see, and you therefore, I think, have a responsibility, particularly as somebody who has an intersection of an identity with that privilege, to continue to open the door and pull in more people into these spaces where more decisions can be made that better reflect all of us. So yeah, that's a very hodgepodge explanation of all of it, but it definitely for me just comes down to our role, or what I see my role as a queer MP is trying to see the queerness in everybody and celebrating that.
Oh, beautiful, Chloe. I love that. I'll pass to Jan. Are you ready? Yeah. There you go.
I think there's so many ways I could answer this. So one of them, I think, of like, it absolutely informs my politics. And there's kind of on a almost theoretical level, I think it led me to the Greens because of that sense of ecology and biodiversity being essential for our shared survival, right? Like if we lose one part of our ecosystem, then actually we're all under threat. And so for me, in terms of queerness and the fact that our community is made up of communities, and that sense of when one part of our community is under threat, then actually that threatens the survival of all of us. And I see that on a holistic level too for our whole society. That and actually that we'll perform like at our best when each group is able to thrive and like environment is nurtured. So it's kind of, for me, that informs it at that theoretical level. There's also just like that experience. I grew up in Invercargill in the 70s and 80s. The only person I knew who was queer was my hairdresser, George, and like had very strong fundamentalist Haiti religion in my upbringing. That so there was the impact of invisibility and the impact of very strong messages of sin and wrongness and no place. And I think for me, all of those things combined to mental illness, but that you know, the process of coming out for me was part of my healing. But doing the work to address those things of lack of visibility and stigmatization and marginalization definitely informs my work, as does the experience of, and even if unknowingly, like in some ways at times, but being on the margins, not always being a bad thing, sometimes being a beautiful, better place to be than forcing yourself into the center where it doesn't work for you. And so, yeah, there's a lot in there for me.
So beautifully said, Jan. It's so similar to how I feel, and how I feel like my queerness is in everything I do. Where some people say that, oh, it's just a part of you. I'm like, oh, it's all of me and it's all of everything. And when I say that I'm fighting for rainbow communities, we as a community intersect with everybody else in the world. So when I say I care about rainbow people, I care about everybody, you know? Yeah, exactly. We're a community made of communities. That's such a good quote. I'll pass on to Ricardo.
Yeah, I think that comment about like being queer is like, it's all of me, but so is, for example, like being a migrant and all these other things, like they're all part of me. And I think they're all deeply influence how I do politics. And I think a really good example for me is like on this issue that we've been working on around how the government defines relationships, right? And or like treats relationships. And so in the welfare system, this whole idea of like relationships and the nature of marriage, which I think is the most heteronormative patriarchal BS ever, right? And so like where you lose your benefit if work and income is like, oh, you're in a marriage type relationship. And in immigration, there's like this one, for example, that like in order to have like a partnership visa, people are required to live together. And it's like, I think of like my home country, and many constituents have written to me from countries where like being queer is deeply like unsafe and or illegal, like straight up. Like I always find it weird how when I hear about these policies, like my queerness immediately like, it's like a bit in my brain that just immediately activates and just goes like, this is really weird. Like queer people would obviously be really affected by this. Yeah, just the fact that it feels like sometimes when I talk to my straight colleagues and committees, it just doesn't connect, right? So it's just the benefit of having so many of us that hopefully you have more of us bringing that analysis into those spaces. Hopefully. I mean, especially from the ones from the other parties.
Yeah, absolutely, tautoko, that we should always want to create spaces where we can bring all the parts of ourselves together. We absolutely want to do it in this workplace. I think the Greens lead with that, and certainly in my work with takatapui and my research and kind of dedicated my life to this kaupapa, that when I come into Parliament, I came as someone who's already a leader in our communities. And so I come in with some serious attitude. I come in with very high expectation of myself, of our party, but an absolute belief of what we will achieve when we're in there. And I know that the others feel that, because, you know, when someone says, oh, that's just your opinion, Elizabeth, I'm going, really? I think you'll find it's not. I think you'll find this is based on solid research done by our communities. And the expectation that we will want to do things to the highest level that is possible. And sometimes that means just holding the government to account for what they've said they want to achieve, and don't always meet their own standards in that regard. And so it's absolutely up to us. But I think that's also the thing, you know, as we've said, we're the proudest party and the proudest parliament, but we are all cisgendered, we're all endosex. And so we're very conscious. Then I think when I bring this in, there's my personal experience, but it's a small part of my analysis of our communities and what we need. So then it's incumbent on me then to create space for their voices to come in. So that is about always connecting back to our communities, always checking into into our leadership. So I don't just get a big head and go, I've been doing this for years, I know everything and I know what to say and do. That is not how that can operate. I came out of these communities, I'm still in them, and I'll go back to them when I'm done. I always say, Kevin Honui, shout out to Te Whanawhana. The way I look at it is I'm on loan from them to Parliament. And so, yeah, we have to keep creating that space and making sure that we are up to date in our research. We are supporting community, we're creating space and using resource to make that all happen.
Amazing, thank you. I've got more questions, and to get through them faster, I'm just going to pick one of you to answer them. And if you feel like somebody else knows more, you're welcome to pass it to them, or if you want to add on, you're welcome to do that. We've got one here. Do you think the government can amend the Human Rights Act in terms of gender identity, gender expression, and sex characteristics before the next election? I'll pass to Chlöe.
No, this is Elizabeth's expertise. That's what I was trying to say. She's all over this. Did anyone catch her maiden speech?
So I did do, the first thing I did, yeah. Oh, it says right. First thing I did when I came in was do a members bill for exactly this. And however, the Minister of Justice is wanting to update the Human Rights Commission. No, that as well, expand them greatly. I think that's what they need to do. But to amend the Human Rights Act, but in relation to the hate laws stuff that they want to put through, I think that our framing around health and wellbeing and te tiriti o waitangi is better than hate speech, but the priority will be getting it through. So they have absolutely committed to the inclusion of gender identity, gender expression, and sex characteristics with definitions to be going into that work. That should be progressing this year. So we'll be following up and making sure that that happens.
Yay, awesome. So glad to hear it. Sorry, Chlöe, I just wanted to, I felt like I hadn't passed to you, but maybe you'll like this question. I know that Ricardo might want to answer as well. Here it is. How does abolition fit into your queerness? To either of you. Chlöe, if you want to go first.
I mean, Ricardo is definitely going to say be gay to crime, and did deliver an amazing speech to that effect. For me, I think, abolition is about recognizing that the systems that we have in place currently are not designed for all of us, and therefore, I think all of us as Greens in particular, and something that, Catherine Delahunty had said when I called her kind of in a panic when I first got in and was like, I feel like an alien. She was like, that's a good thing. And I think, if you didn't feel like an alien, particularly as a Green, then maybe you should be checking yourself a bit. The fact that all of us operate inside of the system now that we were once raging against, I think is a cognitive dissonance that we have to grapple with, but it is the reality that a lot of what we do, and I might actually potentially be borrowing some of Jan's kind of explanations here around harm reduction. We fundamentally do not think that this Westminster colonial system built on kind of such an adversarial model that says literally the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition sitting historically 2 swords length apart, that founded on kind of violence and kind of adversarial nature of somehow we're supposedly going to come up with the best possible solution built on this really kind of old school patriarchal form of violence and power expression is just, totally cooked. And I think that's why all of us in the Greens, our kaupapa is fundamentally, and need to recognise those who fought for te tiriti o waitangi to be properly recognised in that charter, which flows through to kind of those values of ecological wisdom, recognition of the fact that resources are finite. If you accept that, the next one, social justice and social responsibility, makes complete sense. Those resources have to be fairly shared in order to have a stable, let alone cohesive society that everybody can participate in. Then you get appropriate decision making where everybody has the opportunity to express themselves. And again, you can continue to grapple with new and novel situations and build new systems and tweak them as appropriate. And non-violence, which I think is another one that is worthy of closer scrutiny, because I mean, of course, we're hippies, we don't like going to war, but if you look at that a little deeper, it's actually about having those really difficult conversations which otherwise can escalate to the point of aggression, and figuring out how to resolve that with a level of maturity that doesn't come easily. So that's kind of what I think abolition looks like. I think that's the first principles of a system that works as best as possible for all of us, but is so far removed from where we're at now. And I'll pass to Ricardo, who also give a better insight than that.
Oh no, I mean, I don't have a very, that was a very thorough answer. I think my very brief answer to that is that, I mean, it's like carceral systems have failed so many communities, including queer people, right? I mean, I think of like the conversation around poppers, like, damn, like, it's just like the criminalization of these substances to me just like feels deeply like problematic, but I also find the discourse around it to be so targeted towards like the use of the substances in our communities, as opposed to looking at like much better health approaches to it, right? And so I think it's like, dismantling those supposed systems that are meant to keep us safe, but actually end up often harming us as part of taking an abolitionist approach. But yes, I mean, we go to crime and all of the stuff that comes with it.
Absolutely tautoko. Oh,
I
Chlöe.
just had one final thing, which I think it was. I once had someone kind of unpack it, and that, you know, when you're a kid and you're learning about the world and you're, you know, pointing at different things and you're like, what's that? That's a table. What's that? That's a cup. What's that? That's prison. What's a prison? That's where bad people go. If you do not have interaction with the prison system by virtue of your whānau, your community's interactions with it throughout the rest of your life, that is a rhetoric and a stigma that you will hold forever and not be able to unpack unless somebody challenges you with it and probably tries to help unpack it. And I think that's, again, part of what our role is, to help people understand the narrowness of our perspectives unless we're encountering people with different backgrounds.
Oh, beautifully said. Awesome. We've got another question here. I'll read it out. Kia ora, thank you for all your amazing mahi on the Conversion Practices Prohibition Legislation Bill. Awesome. Given that intersex communities were not included in the bill, what steps will the Green Party take to specifically advocate for enhanced legal intersex protections related to bodily autonomy and self-determination moving forward? I know that both Jan and Elizabeth have done mahi with the intersex communities. Because Elizabeth answered that question before, I'm going to pass this one to Jan, but you're both welcome to
I think it's best to, because Elizabeth's been active in terms of her interventions just in the last couple of weeks. So I reckon my work's more historical, but super awhiing it.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we fought hard in select committee to and through the process to have sex characteristics included with gender identity and gender expression. Could not get that through. So then the next fight was to make sure that something was mentioned in the report from the committee, because when it's in the report, it actually empowers the committee, even if it's not in the bill itself, it empowers the committee to then follow up with government, and government become accountable to report back on progress once it's in there. So that was my next fight. So they have stated, the government has undertaken that they will move from a medicalized to a rights-based approach to dealing with the issues and discrimination facing intersex people, and that within the health system, because of course that is where the greatest violence occurs against intersex infants, but also over the lifespan of an intersex person, that they will create a best practice guidelines for our health system. So now that that's in there, we can hold them to account. So when I get back to work, we'll be saying, great, when is that starting? How do we bring our communities in on this and then keep that pressure up? Because it's now that it's clearly stated, because the government, we can all make promises, but once it's in that, they can be held account to actually do it. So that was the key thing my backup to achieve. So this is core shout out to ITANs, to all of the intersex people who have fought so hard to get us to this point, and thank you for the training and education you have given me so that I can be an effective ally for you in this place.
Kia ora, big tautoko, and shout out to ITANs, everyone who works there, and Mani Mitchell. Thank you so much to the amazing intersex community for being such awesome advocates for themselves and for everyone else as well. I'm gonna insert a little quickfire round in here with some fun questions. So it will be for all of you, but the goal is just to answer it like very fast. And then you can pass on to the next person. So the first question, I'm gonna do 3 questions. The first one is your current phone background pic and why? I will go to Jan first because she's first on my screen. Oh, Jan, you're on mute.
Okay, hopefully, you can't see it because there's, it's just, sorry, can you see the cute cat nose? That's my cat Ginger. We joined a select committee meeting yesterday, and I had to ask a question of one of the submitters while pushing down on him and putting my face, yeah, it was, he has no boundaries, and thank goodness I did not birth children, because the world does not need more chaos. But yes.
Oh, we can pass on to Ricardo next because he's next on my screen.
This photo is relatively new, and I realize I've got like boring standard iOS screen, so I'm just going to show you a picture of my cat because I just brought it up, so it's an equivalent. Oh my gosh, I hate the blurred background thing. it almost looks really like erotic. It is my cat sitting. I'm just going to describe it. It's my cat just sitting like a person, and it tends to do this thing where it just like sits on its two legs and just starts like grooming itself, but it's just very cute. So I've got cat pics, no interesting background pics. So over to Elizabeth, if you've got a.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't have one. Just I don't know how to put it on this phone, this new work phone. Otherwise, it would be of my cats or my dogs.
And I've just got me and my niece when she was much younger. But she's a tiny baby jelly bean there, but she's now nearly a year and a half old.
Oh, beautiful. Always good to see some beautiful pets and sweet babies. And there was actually a question in the chat that was about, are you a cat or a dog person? Which I just want to call out slightly, that I feel like that's quite a binary question that I know is really common in our society. Totally chill, we've all done it before, but I'm just challenging that mindset that there are only two kinds of pets that we could be or could like. And also, I loved Elizabeth's answer for that reason that was in my head. And she said, it would be with my cats or my dogs. And I was like, very queerness for that question. The next question I'm going to ask is, if this is also kind of pet related, if you were a badass mythical creature, what would you be? We'll go the same order if that works. Jan first.
Having terrible memory in terms of retaining all of the mythical creatures, I'm just going to go for Medusa. Because like kind of badass feminist, and I had this great book called Angry Women that had Medusa on the cover, and I just feel like that's appropriate some days. Go to Elizabeth.
I did think about this. I have a tattoo of a panther, which goes from my knee to right up to the top of my thigh. So I would be a kick-ass black cat who could breathe fire and fly. And Alofa's called it a jagan. That's what I would be. Sleek as graceful, dangerous.
Graceful and dangerous, Ricardo?
I played far too much Dungeons and Dragons to pick like one mythical inspired creature. But I think, I'm just going to go like straight at home and choose the Quetzalcoatl, which is a deity that it's like a serpent with wings, and often depicted as having rainbow colored wings in popular culture. So I think people decided to adopt it as a queer icon. So, yeah.
Mythical creature, yeah, that's hard. I am fascinated by the bee, because the bee was a mystery to, and obviously it's not mythical, but it was a mystery to many scientists for a really long time, because it shouldn't be able to fly because of its weight and its wings and its whole anatomy. So I love that. But outside of that, actually mythical, we'll go a dragon.
Amazing. I love imagining you all as those creatures. One more quick fire question. So just fast if you can. And it's going to be, who is an inspirational rainbow person for you? I will relieve Jan from going first for this one. I'm going to go to Chlöe first. Sorry, Chlöe, your face.
All of the people here. Sorry, that's fine. Or actually, Sissy. Sissy Rock. By virtue of that stand. Just in terms of what first came to mind.
Lovely. Elizabeth?
I generally always acknowledge our elders, but I want to shout out to some of our young people. And so particularly, I want to shout out to the exec of Rainbow Greens, who helped keep me sane in Parliament. And Zoe, Kylie, I will forget some names while I'm on the spot. Just hold tight to the kaupapa, but so imaginative, so creative, but also tight as analysis, and humor, brains, got it all. So yeah, I'm so proud to work with you all.
Oh yes, I'm going to tautoko that. Shout out. Love our Rainbow Greens exec. Ricardo?
There's far too many people I admire. I think I'm going to give a shout out to Radhika, who's a young migrant who's often, I think, challenged us in like the most in the most like inspiring ways, because I think it grounds me into like remembering the politics that I have and that Parliament tends to sort of like stratify. So yeah, just like appreciation for Radhika's work.
I normally answer this question about like the everyday people that are never acknowledged. But actually, in this case, I'm going to say Audre Lorde, because I've got one of her quotes tattooed on my leg that I got tattooed when I became an MP, which is, "My silences have not protected me." But like just super, like for me, real and life-changing kind of intersectional analysis, just grounded in life, and just so much power and beauty to it and realness that, yeah.
Just have to say that when I was a young activist, I hung out with Audre Lorde and helped host her when she was in New Zealand.
Oh.
I have photos.
Oh, just taking a minute to absorb that knowledge. Wow, Elizabeth, that's so cool. Thank you so much for participating in our little quickfire round. We might have some more, another quickfire round later, but we'll get stuck back into some of the bigger questions in the Q&A. This one here is from Michelle. Has there been any progress in the advancing of LGBTQIA+ rights in the Pacific? Unfortunately, it's still a long-standing issue that seems to be standing still. I'll go to one person for this if somebody would like to volunteer, or I will pick. Oh, Elizabeth, did you?
Just as part of our Te Mātāwaka, which is our Māori Pacifica, and Jan is our Te Tiriti o Waitangi spokesperson, it's our caucus in the House, and so we have talked about rainbow issues in the Pacific. So we have talked about how we can support, but our key thing is that we support the leadership of the whānau over there, that and our leaders here, that it's not up for us as what is perceived then as, you know, we're a colonial power in the Pacific. It's not up for us to tell them what to do or bring our westernized views of LGBTIQ or rainbow, which are often not even words they use, over there. So that is the key thing, is that we're looking to their leadership, and what they need us to do, that's what we look to do.
Tautoko. And we've got another question, and this one reminded me from Ricardo saying that Radhika is inspirational. I know specifically with the BDMRR stuff, I feel the same, that she'd really opened my mind. And here's a question from Alison with the BDMRR. How will you hold the government to account to ensure that overseas born New Zealanders, refugees and asylum seekers, the question ends, but I'm assuming are also afforded those rights? That we've now progressed with the passing of the BDMRR bill for New Zealanders born in New Zealand, born here. I will go to Jan. No?
Elizabeth.
Again, Elizabeth. It's
Elizabeth. I'm sorry, Elizabeth.
It's really tricky with me holding the rainbow portfolio, because kind of hold all these things. So progress on people born overseas. So again, this was something that we fought really, really hard through the entire process. It was a common theme that was brought up, and it was decided not to progress it. However, the undertaking is that it is being worked on right now. The officials have already been working on this for a while, and it will, the undertaking is that it will be ready before the law goes into law. So the goal is that by the time it actually is real and can actually do it, it will include everybody. So, and the undertaking was to work directly with communities. Jan?
I just wanted to acknowledge Alison, who's asked this question, who presented the petition to Parliament that kicked this whole process off. and whose experience as somebody born offshore, she shared directly with the committee, and everyone was really persuaded by it. And then, you know, the work got stalled by other political parties. And so I just really want to acknowledge the leadership from Alison that is benefiting a huge number of people in this country, and the sense of frustration that that wasn't done in partnership all the way along and has waited till this point, and that I have real confidence Elizabeth will hold their feet to the fire to make sure it happens.
Awesome. I've got another question, and as it's a long one, so as I'm reading it, if you're keen to answer, just unmute yourself and I'll send it to you, or say if you're keen as soon as I finish. Here we go. How do we get help if we have been discriminated against at work? In the past, it happened to me, but the union said discrimination is hard to prove, like being in a union, being of a race, religion, LGBTQIA+. I want to know, in case it happens in the future, the union only helped me with my wage claims when they said they only have the resources for, as they are nice and easy to do. Why are employment lawyers so expensive? Maybe they could have helped me.
I can answer.
Yeah, cool.
Well, I won't be able to give a complete answer to that, because like this has been a really long-standing problem, and but there are things that we should be doing to be able to make this less likely, and so one of them actually is around strengthening our unions so that they have the resources to be able to intervene more easily. And so the Greens have got a policy around default union membership, so that when you sign up to a job, you would opt out if you didn't want to be in the union, rather than now having to go to that effort to kind of find out and join up. So it would be, you'd be put into a union unless you said no. And the intent is, because we know inequality and economically, but in other forms, thrives in the absence of unions and strong union membership, because that sense of collective work helps address inequality. And the unions have been doing some great work in terms of queer members across different unions, developing workplace resources to be able to do education within your own workplace around kind of gender and sexual orientation, and to break down that discrimination in their workplaces, and have been providing training for people. So that's another thing there, that the Out at Work network, if you're wanting to engage with them in the future, or ahead of any other job, then you may be able to kind of, if you're noticing some stuff in your work where you're like, this is a warning sign, maybe do run some of that training in your workplace, kind of might help. And on the individual level, in terms of that stuff, is like, I'm not a fan of individual response things, and it doesn't solve everything at all, but it is just kind of taking a record, like of screenshots, of keeping emails, of actually just, you know, writing down if something happens, so that you've got that evidence in place, which gives you it's a much easier to be able to have a chance of a case being successful. But we also have a huge amount of work to do around kind of safe workplaces, and there are many things that we need to do, and you know, and we just have to acknowledge that, unfortunately, despite the fact that the amount of time we all spend at work, a lot of our workplaces are not safe places, and it's not just on the grounds of discrimination around gender identity or sexual orientation. It's, you know, around all forms of discrimination and just bullying and violence. And I'm going to stop there because I'll just keep going.
Oh, thank you so much, Jan. Thank you. We've got another question here, and it's a little bit of a tough one, so I'm also going to balance it with some queer joy. It's, how do you cope with the homophobia as Rainbow MPs? I'm going to pass this one to Ricardo, but Ricardo, as a treat for answering this one, which I think would be helpful for advice for people in other roles where they might struggle with homophobia, please tell us something that brings you queer joy, just to balance it out.
So I'll address the first part, which is, yeah, I guess.
Oh, the first.
No.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, if I got that correctly, hopefully. I mean, it's hard when you're a public figure because you get really this homophobia, right? But I think what brings me queer joy and helps me deal with the homophobia, I just love a good sort of social time with my queer friends to just either vent about it or just yarn about everything but the homophobia, right? And so that to me is always a happy place. And luckily a lot of I've got a place on Tuesdays when I'm in Auckland that I give to my friends, my queer friends, and that's always sort of like a place where I top up my energy. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much. And another question, and for the sake of balance, I'm going to throw this one to Chlöe. And it's, what are some good ways to get involved with the Green Party?
Oh, so many good ways to get involved with the Green Party. Ro, I mean, you are a co-convener, is that correct? Yes, Ro's a co-convener, so Rosemary can tell you a lot about their experience, but I mean, it depends how you want to be involved in the Greens. I mean, we regularly talk about the fact that we're the parliamentary wing of kind of a community organising movement in terms of the Green MPs here. You know, we have local body elections coming up this year, and we just want to see swathes of good Green people out there, even sometimes that we collaborate in kind of umbrella what are they called, tickets, which are not parties, at a local government level. So there's some really awesome opportunities to campaign there. Campaigning, like we did campaigning quite differently in 2020 in Auckland Central, and that was, you know, doing cleanups, but also doing, we did drag shows, we did comedy shows, we had so much fun, we planted trees. It can look like so many different things. So I think it's always about finding where your people are. We base things kind of geographically, but also on networks. So you can be involved through the Rainbow Greens, for example, or the Young Greens, for example. There's the Union Greens. And then there are, of course, some great electorates like Auckland Central to be involved in.
Awesome, absolutely. Yeah, so many ways to get involved, and you can always have a look out on my Instagram or Chlöe's Instagram. We're always posting different volunteering events we're going to be at. Here's a fun little question, which is, will there ever be Green Party Rainbow merch? Which perhaps, if we maybe get those shirts that Elizabeth was saying, that would be really awesome. Jan?
Could I just say I designed one and made them very badly for a out in the park years ago with a tick my box, and I've got a big tick. It was a bit binary, but they were pretty cute, I've got to say, and I've always wanted to bring them back.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I know I would love that. Maybe next election, maybe even for local government elections. That would be so cool. Here's a question from Leah, and it's for all of you, but especially lovely Elizabeth. What is the Green Party's plan to address the unjust psychological assessment required to assess gender affirming healthcare? This requirement directly contradicts the Health and Disability Commissioner's Code of Rights, and it's standard practice in most NZ DHBs. I'll pass to Elizabeth.
Just to say that we know that pathways to gender affirming healthcare are not clear. We are working hard to, I'm on pay order for the legislation to reform the health system, and we have been mentioning this, working on this. The government have undertaken to make that clearer. So it's a work in progress. We understand this is a huge issue, but also all the other health issues that people who are trans, intersex and non-binary have, because when you're disadvantaged within a system, then you don't get all the other benefits and the actual rights that as a citizen in this country you should have. So absolutely really high priority, and we're keeping it to the front in the select committee and with the minister through this whole process.
Awesome, thank you so much. We've got another one specific for Jan this time, and it's from Rimu for Jan. How do you see cross-ministry action working? For example, MSD/Rainbow. So many of us in the Rainbow communities are struggling with employment, disability, and financially as a whole. Over to Jan.
So I think that sounds, and sorry, I should introduce, this is Bean, the cat. Tail that you're seeing here. So it was rude not to introduce him. I think with the ministries, the central kind of linchpin to that really is if you get that ministry in place, then it's able to make the connections across all of the different ministries. And I do think that there is a piece of work to be done that's, I think, quite exciting to look at like around our population ministries, so women and Pacifica and TPK and disabled people and seniors, of actually bringing communities together to think about what would a design look like in terms of developing government policy that recognise the intersections between all of those communities, that actually we have people who are, you know, that actually their lived experience from being Māori and disabled and queer is different from a Pākehā gay person without a disability, or, you know, like those things. And that we haven't been able to do that piece of work because actually the starting points haven't been acknowledged yet, if that makes sense. Elizabeth may want to add to that.
Absolutely, thank you, Jan. Here's one that I hadn't thought of before, so I'm very interested. It's from Teresa. One issue that is rarely addressed is that many of our elderly queer are being pushed back into the closet or having their gender identity denied when they are put into aged care facilities. We heard some heartening testimony of this at the CARN conference last March. As an employee-led network, CARN does not have the scope, capacity, or mandate to address these issues, and would love to see this picked up by a Rainbow Office Ministry or our wonderful Rainbow MPs. I'm going to pass this one to Ricardo, unless
I mean, I am your senior citizens
yeah.
portfolio holder, so yes. Now that is an issue that has been raised to us, and I think to me it ties in with having the competency at the providing level. But actually, I mean, one of the things that we used to have heaps more was council housing for pensioners, where I think the local and central government can work with community to ensure that, you know, that pensioner housing actually provides a safe space for people who to age being their true selves, right? And so I think that kind of ties in with the other stuff we're doing in terms of a Rainbow Ministry being able to work across agencies to identify the right information about where our communities are and what they need, and B, to actually ensure that those services are provided. But it is, I mean, the person who has the question is very right that this is a reality many people are facing who don't have access to safe housing as they age. And so we should be looking at addressing it.
I know it would be a personal dream of mine when I hopefully get to that age to retire, to have like a lovely queer community, like a co-housing community. That would be so awesome. I would love to be able to see that mahi in my lifetime. Here's another question. I think it will be a good idea to have a navigator in each area/rural health service so a queer person can find someone to discuss options and where they could go. That could be done fairly easily. What do you think? I'm going to pass this one to Chlöe and also say that just to say part of what Ricardo was saying, to tack on that, I know that Rainbow Youth has a lot of awesome mahi all over the country, but they're for people under 27. So it would be, I think this would be great. But Chlöe, what do you think?
No, I was just going to say that this one is one that should be addressed by Elizabeth, especially given that she is in the regions and has had a lot to do with establishing these kinds of regional outreach services.
Kia ora. I think that kia ora, Jerry, lovely to see you on this call. We have so many services and things that are happening in the cities that quite often regions do get left out. And this is the fact. I live in the Tairāwhiti, but Gisborne at least is a reasonably good sized town, so we still have rainbow groups here. I'm quite interested with that as an idea. And just FYI, because this has been recorded, even though we don't get to all your questions and comments, we will have this and we will incorporate this into our development of this paper. So do not think that your great ideas have been lost. So in this case, I would say, because there's government departments in most rural areas or who are responsible for those areas, then we would need some sort of regional connection, because again, we don't want to fall in the trap of doing what all the other ministries do really badly, which was say that people in Wellington tell everybody in the country what to do. So we absolutely will need to do that, local and regional always. Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora. Oops, I clicked on my screen. It made it really big. We've got 10 more minutes in this, so we're gonna try to get through as many questions as possible. But yes, thank you, Elizabeth. We do have the rest of the questions there, and your wonderful Rainbow MPs are always available to be contacted via email if you do have any specific questions for them. And I'm going to not lose track of the question that I thought that I would answer. Here is a great one from Sydney. Do we know what Takatapui involvement is included in the new Māori Health Authority?
I'm sorry to take up so much space. Yes, so I absolutely, I have met with the minister, the minister Andrew, the Honourable Andrew Little, but also Penny Henare and Aisha Verrill, actually, all of them. So they're very clear that I expect things to be happening for Takatapui. I've strongly suggested they have a Takatapui department in the Māori Health Authority. I will be keeping on hassling them until something like this works. But it's that continual pressure and hassling, but also keeping on top of, because the legislation's one thing, that is the big massive framework, and then all the detail filters out from that. So we're very conscious that the way it looks like it'll be done is very much iwi and Māori provider boards. So then if we don't put something up the top that says, what about your Takatapui communities, then we know that it's unlikely that it'll filter down to all of those areas to then for them to look at and consider that in their community. So that is my absolute goal, is that wherever is the point that I can find to put the requirement in there to be accountable for it, it's going in. So you can bet that that is happening.
Amazing, affirming. Thank you for ending on that note. That was beautiful. We have another question, and it's, do you think the MPs who voted against prohibiting conversion therapy should be excluded from Pride? I'm going to pass this one to Ricardo, but anyone else is also welcome to answer.
I mean, I think it's up to the organizer, right? Because I think it's sometimes, I would set the bar higher, right? I mean, set the bar higher than just supporting basic rights. Like, demand more of us to earn our right in your spaces, I think would be my sort of message to communities considering who and how to involve members of parliament, because otherwise this trace will just give you tokenistic gestures of support, and sometimes when it comes to votes, that can be important, but surely we can ask them far more.
Have them commit to like 4 or 5 things before they're allowed in. Just give them, then they have their rainbow tick.
Oh, absolutely, thank you too. And another one, what are your views of gender equity courses in secondary schools for the future in spirit of kotahitanga? I'll pass to Chloe for this one.
Tiano is actually our compulsory education spokesperson, so he'll be all across what's going on with the curriculum and everything else at present. But when we're talking about gender equity courses, I'm assuming, I mean, that might be one more for Jan or Elizabeth.
I think that hasn't been on my list, at least so far. I've got to say, they're open to the idea, but they really have to work quite closely with schools in terms of additional things that are compulsory within the curricula. And the call coming from our communities at the moment, the strongest call is for compulsory consent education. And that sexuality education, that we've got guidelines. There's been some resource put now after they just developed the guidelines and left them stranded there with no resource or support for people to implement them. And they were developed by people in our communities around and were pretty good, but needs that support. And we've got a problem with the structure of our education system that makes it very difficult to make anything compulsory because of the Tomorrow School structure. And but when you hear about, you know, no, I was about to start a rant about the levels of sexual violence against our students and in their schools and all of that, which I can probably spare you because you've probably heard it all from me before. I'll leave that there.
But it might also be worth adding just to the curriculum changes that are presently happening with regard to our history in schools. I mean, Elizabeth could tell you a lot about her research and her doctorate and, you know, the history of Whakapāpui and, you know, teaching our young people about that, you come to realize that the binaries that we've fallen into and so many of the kind of harmful systems are a product of colonization, and we can choose to get rid of them.
And we will get rid of them together. Yes, absolutely. With only 4 minutes to go, sadly, this has gone so fast, but yes, as I've said, you can always reach out to our wonderful MPs through their emails, which we'll put in the chat. And also, I would like us to end on a question that I personally would love to hear from y'all. Our Rainbow MPs, it's so awesome to have you representing us in Parliament. I do also feel like, though, that cis people don't get asked this question enough, which is what makes you feel gender euphoria? And for anyone who might be listening who doesn't really understand what gender euphoria is, it's a term commonly used by trans people to describe what like form of expression makes them feel like clothes or hair or jewelry or anything makes you feel like affirmed in your gender. And for me, it's this haircut. As soon as I got it, I was like, this is correct. I'd probably summarize gender euphoria as what makes you feel the youest you. So any closing thoughts? And then I would also love to hear from you on what makes you feel that gender euphoria. I'm gonna pass to Ricardo first.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I found myself questioning over the past couple of years. So I think that's a hard one for me, right? Because I think to me it's when I feel in a social space as though the construct, at least in my case, like the construct of being a man, like isn't really like one that is factoring in, like in the sense of like where if I want to be a femme or kind of present myself however I want in terms of presenting my gender, like it's kind of just allows to happen. So I think often in rainbow green spaces or with my close friends, that's where I feel the most affirmed for being who I am, if that hopefully answers the question.
Totally, I'll pass on to Chlöe next.
When I was a teenager, I had a boyfriend who told me that my swearing was really unladylike. So I'd like to say that it's swearing. It makes me feel fucking gender euphoric. But I would also add probably my tattoos too. That was a process of me kind of claiming the space in my body, which I, have only really at 27 come to feel like kind of more comfortable and confident in. And to that effect, you know, I've also been told, and I love being told by people that I'm going to regret these things, because I just see them as like kind of like passport stamps. Like they are they're a stamp of who I was and what I was experiencing at a time in my life. So yeah, I really like, that's me, swearing and tattoos.
Awesome. I totally relate to that. Elizabeth?
I'm a takatapui lesbian femme, and so I wear clothes always that make me feel good, that are my colors, and I think, and it's not an item of clothing or anything, but I think it's having gotten my moko kauai as an ultimate expression for me of mana wahine, of my connection to Papa Tuanuku, and just being completely solid. I was brought up to know who I was, so I have a strength and a confidence that comes with that. And when I got my moko kauai 6 years ago now, it was a way of gaining strength from my ancestors for things still to come, that I wouldn't know the challenges I would be facing, but I would be ready to face them because of it. So I think with the support of our ancestors being grounded on this earth, then there's not much I can't do. And my hot wife.
Nice. This is a new concept to me. And like gender's a weird thing. So I'm finding it kind of challenging, interestingly. Like I think, and for me, clothes are costume, and so's hair, so's the whole thing. It's like there's not a super tight connection between how I understand myself and the play of how I present myself. So I think for me, like in terms of those moments of being like, yeah, would be in nature, feeling strong, or, you know, making out with my girlfriend.
Amazing. I love those answers, and also that I'd kind of thought about it in the ways that it works for me. But y'all had shared that for a lot of you, and I would agree that it's the people around you that make you feel affirmed to be yourself. And that's a really good, I think, a really good and wholesome space for us to end on, especially considering it's Pride Month. And that's really the feeling that I like yearn for all year round, is that being surrounded by our community during Pride. So I'm sad that we couldn't have this in person, but I'm so glad that we could still get together. And to everybody watching as well, that you're part of our Pride celebration. And hopefully you're thinking about what makes you feel that gender euphoria, or what makes you feel proud to be yourself. And we're proud of you too. And we've spoken already about the Rainbow Ministry and the petition. I actually don't know if we mentioned that there is a petition that you can sign if this sounds like a great thing to you, which it really will be. It will be really great for our community to have. The petition is in our Instagram bio. It's in our Facebook bio as well. We can put a link to it on our socials. There's one that Rosalie's just put in the chat as well. If anyone wanted to say any last words of support about the Rainbow Ministry or get people out to sign that petition, you're welcome to shout it out.
One very quick thing.
Yes.
It's a hard act to follow to do the largest petition in the history of the country last year to ban conversion practices. So please, let's at least get us up to 5 figures on this petition.
Yes, I would love that. So after this, if everybody who hasn't signed already could go sign, we would love you so much for that. And that would be a great way to celebrate Pride. I want to thank everybody who has listened, everybody who has answered questions. It's been really lovely to be in this space, this virtual space with you all. And I'm really honored to host as a proud queer, agender, rainbow green, and just love your mahi, you four. You're the rainbow people that inspire me. That would have been my answer to that question. Chlöe's, you know, the reason that I got involved in the Green Party, and seeing a queer person in that position who I could relate to in so many ways has enabled me to do the kind of volunteering mahi that I do now and host this event. So thank you so much. I will close this with a karakia. Kua mutu a mato mahi mo tēnei wā, mana ki tia mai mato katoa o mato hoa o mato whānau Aio ki te aorani. Our work has finished for the time being. Protect us all, our friends, our family. Peace to the universe. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll see you on that petition. Thank
Ora,
you.
Pomarie people.
Pomarie.